Hey guys, welcome to another channel episode. Remember, this is a channel where we talk all about how you don't need to be a CEO in order to have some impact on the world. And welcome back. I'm so happy to be making another video today. We're going to be talking all about what I've been doing ever since getting a job and what languages I'm learning, what resources I'm using, and more. So just this is going to be a pretty short, quick video, but it's going to be packed with information on kind of what are the next steps to do after you get a job. Alright, so I got my iPad with me, and so let's talk a little bit about what I've been learning after getting a job, and then move on to some more practical things to do once you get a job in tech. Alright, so let's start with the book. So in my company, we use TypeScript. I've never programmed in TypeScript. I've read a bunch of JavaScript, and TypeScript really is just the next iteration of JavaScript. It's a safer JavaScript, and I come from a background in Python, as you guys know, and so I'm extremely excited to learn a new language, especially one that's so useful like TypeScript, because you're really learning two languages in one, right? In order to do this, I've been working with TypeScript during the week at my job, and then on the weekends I've been spending 4 hours or so going over a book in order to learn more theoretically, learn the background, learn what's possible with the language, and then I use that almost immediately at work the next following days, and it's been very useful kind of plan that I've had to be able to read all about theoretical side of TypeScript while also working on it practically. Now, I had really good Python sources, and I knew a lot of people that program in Python, and so I was able to get a lot of really good sources. But for TypeScript, I wasn't really able to find like a really good course or someone on YouTube that spoke to me. So if you guys know about any other source that I could be using that might be better, please let me know. And just let me know in the comments below. But for right now, I am using the book called Programming TypeScript. It's an O'Reilly book. I got it online and I have the PDF version. I use my computer to write notes. I use Notion, as you guys know, and we're gonna go over my Notion notes now. So here we go. Here's my Notion page. I have a little section of what the book is about. I haven't filled that out yet because I'm not done with the book. But then I have these sections that I can go into for chapter 1, 2, and 3. I started this book in October 30th, and it's about TypeScript. So the first chapter was all about what TypeScript is, and in a nutshell, it's a safer version of JavaScript. So basically, you get JavaScript, and you put a lot of explicit typing on top of it, and you make sure that the compiler catches your mistakes before runtime. And the idea of TypeScript over JavaScript is to be able to catch bugs before they happen, and that's basically it. TypeScript is just built on top of JavaScript. So now let's move on to chapter 2. Now chapter 2 talks all about how that, like I mentioned, how the typing and the compiling works to catch your mistakes before they happen. And so the idea here is that you have JavaScript, and JavaScript code gets moved into JavaScript AST, basically just like parsing it and making it easy for the computer to read. And then you get the AST and you convert it into bytecode, which is even, basically going down another level to the machine level so your computer understands and can run it. And then the bytecode is evaluated by the runtime. And that's basically it. That's how JavaScript compiles. Now, what we're doing is we're putting another layer on top of that to catch mistakes before they happen in runtime. So we want to catch mistakes at compile time and not at runtime. And so in order to do this, what they've developed was TypeScript. You add another level, which is you got the TypeScript code, you put it to AST, and the AST is then checked by a type checker to make sure that all the types are correct. And then if not, we'll give you some mistakes. We'll tell you, hey, this is not going to work before we even try it. And that's actually really cool. That means you're catching mistakes at compile time and not at runtime, which is saving you a lot of time and potentially saving you from errors before they even happen, which is honestly really cool and really just goes to show that TypeScript is basically a safer JavaScript. And so for chapter 3, it happens to be like a really big chapter because it's probably the most important chapter. It's all about types. Now, TypeScript has types in the name, so you know it's all about these types. These types, as it happens, have like really popular ones, and you have like really like not used ones, not common ones, and you can also create your own alias types, right? Type aliasing. And these types, it can get pretty complicated, but at a surface level, really, the best way to explain it is you know, if you've done programming, you've heard of numbers, you have heard of strings, you've heard of objects, but if you haven't, basically, the idea of a type is basically just like a type of car or a type of shoe, and you don't want to mix types of shoes together if they're different. If they're the same type, maybe you can group them and you can do the same thing with them, but you probably wouldn't take, sandals to a fancy party, and you probably wouldn't take, heels to the beach. So you make sure that these types are in their correct location and used in the right space, and that ends up in a safer code, right? And so what we have here is we have numbers, which you can add, right? But then you have strings in which you can concatenate, and you don't really want to be getting numbers and adding them to strings. That's just not what you want, and that's what typing allows you to prevent. And so just scrolling through this, there's a lot to learn here, a lot of examples. My favorite examples in this book are when they talk about code, about teaching you about the difference of how if you explicitly type, which is like you mention, hey, this is A, and it's a string, and it's says hello, or you can be like, hey, this is a number, and it's 5. But you can also do implicit typing, which is basically you just say, hey, this is A, and it's a 4, and the computer will be like, well, a 4, that's probably a number, right? And that's implicit typing. I learned all about that, and a lot of time you want to use the implicit typing, but sometimes you really want the explicit typing, which, as I mentioned, was mentioning when you create the variable. A, I want it to be a number, and I want it to be 4, right? Now, if you were to use const, right? Const basically makes it so that in certain cases, like here we see const c equals true, ends up evaluating to true because you just set c to something that can't change, and it's a true. So we're just going to make it of type true to make sure that, that to be super safe. That's basically a super safe, because if you were to let it just be like, let a equal true, that would be a boolean, because that a might eventually become a false. And so, TypeScript tries to be as narrow as possible, but sometimes it has to be pretty wide. And yeah, so a lot of examples, like we got the string, we got the numbers, which is all really, really cool. And yeah, so that's basically pretty much all for this. Now, I wanted to mention now and talk a little bit about things I'm learning on the job. Some things I'm learning on the job could be how to set up time to talk to your manager, or how to set up one-on-ones with all your team members and your team to get onboarded. And all of these things I wanted to kind of talk about and touch briefly because they are stuff that I've been learning on the job, and I wanted to share with you guys. It's not all technical, unfortunately. Something that I've been learning a lot at my job has been how important people skills are, how many meetings you have in between coding sessions, and how you really have to guard your individual time, because if not, someone else is going to take it from you. So I guess first piece of advice would be, I wasn't really expecting how much meetings I would have. There, a lot of them are very useful. Like I mentioned, meeting one-on-ones with your manager to make sure everything you're doing is correct and you're not wasting any time. You can have one-on-ones with your teammates just to talk about work that you're working on, but also maybe just talk about things outside of work, which can help build, a sense of community at your job. And but also time meetings can just kind of take up your time, and you can have company-wide meetings in which you visit for an hour, a Zoom which with 100 people, and you don't really get anything out of it, and that's probably time you could have spent studying or working on writing some code that's actually useful. And so I guess things that I've learned, like I mentioned, is when you start your job, you really want to make sure you learn all about the resources your job has to learn about things in the company, or learn about the languages you're learning, like I am here, or talk or like how things are done, who to go to if you're having problems, for example, with your manager or with a teammate. And so those are the first steps of just familiarizing yourself with the resources that exist. Second would be definitely to start paying attention to the relationship with your manager. You want your relationship to your manager to be a professional one. There is a time and place to be more casual with your manager, but you almost always want to keep things with your manager extremely professional, and you don't want to go too in depth about your personal life with your manager. You want to keep things a little bit separated there. And then for team, I find team one-on-ones is very important, not only for work, for example, pairing on a hard task in order to learn how it's done at your job, what kind of styling, what kind of tests they run. These are all things that you kind of need a knowledge transfer for when you start a new job, but also one-on-ones of just being casual. Like I mentioned, you don't want to be too casual with your manager, but I find that being casual with your teammates might actually help the team come together and enjoy working together, and doing stuff outside of work can sometimes also make you guys work better together inside of work. And so some things that I recommend is, a lot of people like enjoy playing video games, a lot of people enjoy watching movies, and that's kind of universal things. A lot of people enjoy going on walks, and so you can do these things with your teammates and have one-on-one super short, like 30 minutes, and then in your next pairing session, it's been found that playing a video game with your team members can actually help problem solving skills, can actually help people in groups like communicate better. And so things like that is things I strongly recommend you do when you start a job. Ask like, hey, what video games are you playing? There's car games, there's card games, there's ton of easygoing games that shouldn't be a problem to play at work. For example, I'd say in my experience, one of the games that we play a lot in my company is and like with my team is actually like Pictionary. So where you draw, it's really fun because you're drawing with a mouse, which is the worst thing to draw with, but everyone else has to figure out what you're drawing, and things like that can help community. And I swear those games helped me develop deeper relationships with my teammates more than anything else that I did during my onboarding session or anything else that I did while coding with them. And so I think that's very important. And yeah, so those are my tips for now. First 2 weeks working. That's what I've learned so far, and this is what I've been studying for TypeScript. Next week I'll probably continue the series of what I learned in TypeScript and what I learned on the job for you guys to kind of know what it's like when you get a job in tech, and what it's like, starting off a job without knowing the language and without really understanding kind of like the social skills, not social skills, but the soft skills needed to be a computer programmer in this day and age. So yeah, the Zoom age, right? All right, so thanks for watching this video. Let me know if you have any TypeScript resources down below, and I'll see you in the next video. See ya.